The glass doors shatter inward with a sound like a gunshot. 6 armed federal agents swarm the ER at Northlake Medical Center, dragging a man between them whose blood leaves a smeared trail across the white linoleum. He's screaming, words that slice through the air in sharp, guttural bursts, but no one understands him. His face is ash gray, his chest a mess of shredded fabric and darker stains spreading fast. Dr. Kellen Ward freezes mid-step, coffee cup halfway to his lips. Liza Crow, the senior nurse who runs the night shift like a military drill sergeant, backs up against the supply cart, her clipboard clattering to the floor. And in the corner, a quiet rookie nurse named Zara Vance looks up from the IV she's been adjusting and goes completely still. Not because she's scared, because she understands every single word the dying man is saying, and what he's saying is this: the building is rigged to explode in 18 minutes. If you want to see how a woman they dismissed as weak becomes the only thing standing between thousands of lives and total annihilation, stay with me until the very end. Drop a comment with the city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Zara Vance had learned a long time ago that being invisible was safer than being seen. It wasn't a lesson anyone taught her outright. It was something that seeped in through 1,000 small cuts. The way Dr. Ward's eyes slid past her when she offered a suggestion during rounds. The way Liza Crow spoke to her in that slow, over-enunciated tone, like Zara's accent meant her brain didn't work right. The way the other nurses clustered together during breaks, their laughter a wall she wasn't invited to breach. So she kept her head down, did her work, and swallowed the quiet humiliation that came with being the rookie no one respected. Tonight had been no different. She'd been assigned the overflow cases, the drunks, the frequent flyers, the ones who came in screaming about phantom pains and left with nothing but a discharge sheet. It was grunt work, the kind meant to remind her where she stood in the hospital hierarchy. She didn't complain. She just moved through the motions, checking vitals, changing bandages, answering call lights that had been ignored by everyone else. The ER at Northlake was a machine, and Zara had learned to be one of its smallest, most replaceable parts. She'd been there for 6 months, long enough to know the rhythms, the hierarchies, the unspoken rules that governed who mattered and who didn't. Long enough to understand that she fell firmly into the second category. She was 2 hours into a 12-hour shift when the doors exploded. The sound was so sudden, so violent, that for a split second the entire ER seemed to freeze. Then the agents poured in, black tactical gear, rifles slung across their chests, radios crackling with static and clipped voices. They moved like a single organism, surrounding the man they'd dragged in, shouting commands that overlapped into chaos. The man himself was thrashing, his eyes wild, his mouth open in a stream of words that didn't match anything Zara had ever heard in this hospital. Not English, not Spanish, not Mandarin or Tagalog or any of the languages the translators kept on speed dial. Dr. Ward stepped forward, his hands raised in a gesture that was half placating, half irritated. "What the hell is this?" The lead agent, tall, square-jawed, with a name tag that read Hale, didn't even look at him. "Federal matter. We need a trauma bay. Now." "This is a hospital, not a black site," Ward shot back. "You can't just—" "We can and we are." Hale's voice was flat, final. "He's a national security asset. He doesn't get treated until we clear him." Lisa moved closer, her face tight. "He's bleeding out. You want him to die before you get your intel?" Hale's jaw twitched. "We have protocols." "Then get your protocols out of my ER," Ward snapped. But even as he said it, he was backing up, because the agents weren't moving, and the man on the gurney was still screaming. Zara stood at the edge of the chaos, her hands gripping the edge of a supply cart so hard her knuckles went white. The man's voice was ragged, desperate, the kind of sound someone makes when they know time is running out. She recognized the cadence first, the sharp, clipped rhythm that didn't quite fit the usual patterns. Then the words started to click into place. Her mother's voice, years ago, teaching her the old dialect in the cramped apartment they'd shared. The one Zara had buried because it marked her as different, as other, in a country that didn't have patience for either. The man was saying the same phrase over and over. Karet Samolan. Karet Samolan. The ground will burn. Her breath caught. She took a step forward, then stopped. No one was looking at her. No one ever did. But the man's eyes were darting around the room, searching, and when they landed on her for just a second, something in them sharpened, like he was looking for someone who might understand. "Get a translator," Hale barked into his radio. "I don't care if you have to pull one out of bed. I need someone who speaks Dari, Pashto, Farsi, anything in that region." "Already tried," a voice crackled back. "We've cycled through 12 linguists, no match." Hale swore under his breath. The man's screaming was getting weaker now, his voice cracking. Ward moved toward the gurney, but one of the agents stepped in front of him, rifle angled down but present. "Step back, doctor." Ward's face flushed. "He's dying." "Then he dies with answers." Zara's hands were shaking. She didn't know why she was shaking. She'd seen worse things in this ER, had held the hands of people who bled out on tables while the surgeons were still scrubbing in. But this was different. This was a countdown she could feel in her chest, a ticking clock that no one else seemed to hear. She forced her feet to move. One step, then another. The noise of the room seemed to fold around her, voices rising and falling like waves, but she kept walking until she was standing at the edge of the restricted zone, where the agents had formed a loose perimeter. Hale glanced at her. His eyes were cold, dismissive. "Move along, ma'am. Let me talk to him." The words came out steadier than she expected. Hale's expression didn't change. "Excuse me?" "I said let me talk to him." She met his gaze and didn't blink. "I understand what he's saying." For a second, no one moved. Then Liza laughed, a sharp, brittle sound that cut through the tension like a blade. "Oh, this is rich. You're telling us you speak whatever language that is?" Zara didn't look at her. "Yes." Ward stepped closer, his mouth twisted in something between disbelief and contempt. "Zara, this isn't the time for—" "I'm not asking permission," she said quietly. "I'm telling you I can help." Hale's eyes narrowed. "What's your name?" "Zara Vance." "And you're a nurse here?" "Yes." "How do you know this language?" She hesitated. Not because she didn't know the answer, but because the answer was something she'd spent years trying to bury. "My mother taught me. It's a regional dialect, not common, but I know it." Hale didn't move. "If you're lying to me, I'm not." The man on the gurney let out another scream, weaker this time, and his hand clawed at the air like he was trying to grab onto something that wasn't there. Zara's chest tightened. She could see the blood pooling beneath him, could see the way his breathing was starting to shallow out. 18 translators couldn't crack this, Hale said slowly. "And you think you can?" "I don't think, I know." Something in her voice must have landed because Hale's expression shifted, not to belief, but to calculation. He glanced at the man, then back at Zara. "You've got 30 seconds. If you can't get him to stop screaming, you're out." She didn't wait for him to change his mind. She moved past him, past the other agents, and stepped up to the gurney. The man's eyes snapped to her immediately, wide and glassy with pain and something deeper, terror, maybe, or recognition. She leaned in close, her voice low and steady. "Sharekna, Ana fehemtak." "I hear you. I understand you." The man went completely still. His mouth opened, closed. Then he grabbed her wrist with a grip so tight it sent a jolt of pain up her arm. "Keret Samolan," he rasped. "Maktib Sabathalath Tisata Dakik." "The ground will burn." It's written. Under the foundation. 18 minutes. Her stomach dropped. She turned her head just enough to see Hale watching her, his hand resting on the radio clipped to his vest. "He's saying there are bombs," she said clearly, "planted under the hospital, in the oxygen manifold, if I'm understanding him right. He said 18 minutes. The room went silent. Not the kind of silence that comes from shock. This was the kind that comes right before an explosion, the held breath before the scream. Ward's face went pale. Liza took a step back, her hand flying to her mouth. Hale's expression didn't change, but his fingers tightened on the radio. "Say that again," he said. "Bombs," Zara repeated. "Under the building. He said they're on a timer. 18 minutes from the time he was brought in." Hale stared at her for a long, hard second. Then he lifted the radio to his mouth. "This is Hale. I need a full sweep of the sublevels, oxygen lines, and utility access. Possible explosive threat. Authorization code Delta 79er. The voice on the other end crackled. "Copy that. Initiating sweep." Ward stepped forward, his face twisted. You're taking the word of a... He stopped himself, but the damage was already done. Zara felt the weight of what he'd almost said settle over her like a shroud. Hale's eyes flicked to Ward. You got something to say, Doctor? Ward's jaw worked. She's a rookie. She barely passed her probation review. You're gambling on her word? I'm gambling on the fact that she's the only one in this room who got him to stop screaming, Hale said flatly. If you've got a better option, now's the time. Ward said nothing. Liza was still staring at Zara like she was seeing her for the first time, or maybe like she was seeing something she didn't want to believe. The man on the gurney coughed, a wet, rattling sound that sent blood spraying across the sheet. Zara leaned in again, her hand resting on his shoulder. Ein? She asked. Where? He coughed again, his grip on her wrist loosening. Tahet al-Mashraha, al-Khazanat al-Markaziyya. Below the surgical wing, the central reservoir. She straightened, her heart hammering. He's saying the surgical wing, central oxygen reservoir. Hale was already moving, barking orders into the radio. I need bomb squad to the surgical sublevels, central oxygen tank. Move, move, move. The ER erupted into controlled chaos. Nurses started pulling patients out of rooms, orderlies rushed to clear the halls, and somewhere overhead, the intercom crackled to life with a calm, automated voice announcing a facility-wide evacuation. Zara stood frozen by the gurney, her hand still resting on the man's shoulder. He was staring up at her, his eyes glassy but focused, and he said something so quietly she almost didn't catch it. Shukran, Ana Asif. Thank you. I'm sorry. Then his eyes rolled back and the monitor beside him let out a long, flat wail. Ward moved in immediately, hands already reaching for the crash cart, but Hale stepped in front of him. No, he stays down. He's coding, and he's also the only one who knows if there are more devices, Hale said coldly. You bring him back, and we lose the advantage. Ward's face went red. That's not how this works. It is tonight. Zara stepped back, her legs shaking. She could feel Liza's eyes on her, could feel the weight of every person in the room suddenly aware that she existed. But it wasn't the kind of attention she'd wanted. It was the kind that felt like being pinned under a microscope, every flaw and fracture exposed. Hale turned to her, his expression unreadable. You're sure about what he said? She nodded. Yes. And you're sure you understood him correctly? Yes. Because if you're wrong, I'm not. He studied her for another long moment. Then he nodded once, sharp and final. Stay close. If we need you again, I want you in reach. She wanted to say something, wanted to ask why he believed her when no one else did, wanted to know what happened if the bombs were real and they didn't find them in time. But the words stuck in her throat, and all she could do was nod. The next 12 minutes were the longest of her life. She stood at the edge of the ER, watching as the building emptied in waves. Patients wheeled out on gurneys, families herded toward the exits, staff moving with the kind of practiced efficiency that came from years of drills. Somewhere deep below, she knew, the bomb squad was racing against a clock she couldn't see. Every second that ticked by felt like a weight pressing down on her chest. Liza walked past her without a word, her face pale and tight. Ward was shouting into his phone, trying to coordinate with the hospital administration, his voice high and strained, and Hale stood near the doors, his arms crossed, his eyes fixed on the radio in his hand like he could will it to bring good news. At the 8-minute mark, the radio crackled. Hale, this is Carmichael. We've got eyes on the device. Oxygen manifold, just like she said. Multiple charges, hardwired to a digital timer. Hale's jaw tightened. Can you disarm it? A pause. Then, working on it. Timer's at 6 minutes 40. The room seemed to shrink. Zara felt her knees buckle, and she grabbed onto the nearest wall to steady herself. 6 minutes. Less than that now. And if they didn't stop it... She couldn't finish the thought. The seconds crawled. 5 minutes. 4. The radio stayed silent. Hale's knuckles were white where he gripped it. Ward had stopped shouting and was just standing there, staring at nothing. Liza was halfway to the exit, her hand pressed against her mouth. At 2 minutes and 30 seconds, the radio crackled again. Hale, we've got a problem. The failsafe is nested. If we trip the wrong wire, then don't trip the wrong wire, Hale said flatly. Copy that. Silence. 1 minute, 45 seconds. Zara's vision started to blur at the edges, and she realized she wasn't breathing. She forced herself to inhale, slow and steady, but it didn't help. The air felt too thin, too heavy, too... Timer disabled, the radio crackled. Charges neutralized, we're clear. The sound that went through the room wasn't quite a cheer. It was more like a collective exhale, a release of tension so sharp it left everyone swaying. Ward sank into a chair, his head in his hands. Liza let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. And Hale just stood there, his face unreadable, the radio still clutched in his hand. Zara didn't move. She couldn't. Her legs felt like they were made of water, and her hands were shaking so badly she had to clench them into fists just to make them stop. She'd been right. The man had been telling the truth. And if she hadn't stepped forward, if she hadn't spoken up, she didn't let herself finish that thought either. Hale turned to her, his expression softer now, but still guarded. You did good. She nodded, unable to speak. What's your full name again? Zara Vance. He repeated it slowly, like he was committing it to memory. Then he glanced at Ward, at Liza, and his expression hardened. You two want to explain to me why she wasn't consulted the second that man started talking? Ward's head snapped up. We didn't know. You didn't ask, Hale cut in. You had a potential asset standing 10 feet away, and you dismissed her because... What? She's a rookie? She doesn't look the part? Liza opened her mouth, then closed it. Ward's face was red again, but this time it wasn't anger, it was shame. Hale shook his head. We'll be filing a full report, and trust me, your names are going in it. He turned back to Zara, and for the first time since the doors had exploded open, she saw something in his eyes that almost looked like respect. Stay available. We're going to need a statement from you, and if that man wakes up... He glanced at the gurney, where the medical team was already working to stabilize the now silent body. You're the only one who can talk to him. She nodded again. Hale gave her one last look, then turned and walked toward the exit, already speaking into his radio. The ER slowly began to return to some semblance of order, patients being wheeled back in, staff resuming their posts, the intercom announcing the all clear. But Zara stayed where she was, rooted to the spot, her heart still pounding in her chest, because she knew, deep in her bones, that this wasn't over. The bomb was disarmed. The hospital was safe. But the look in Ward's eyes, the silence from Liza, the way the other nurses were staring at her now, it all told her the same thing. She'd crossed a line, and there was no going back. The overhead lights flickered once, then steadied. Someone had turned the air conditioning back on, and the vents exhaled a rush of cool air that smelled faintly of disinfectant and something metallic. Zara became aware of how cold she was. Her scrubs were damp with sweat, her hands were ice, and her legs felt like they might give out at any second. She leaned against the wall and tried to breathe. A young orderly, Marcus, she thought his name was, pushed past her with a wheelchair, his face tight. He didn't look at her. Nobody did. They were all too busy pretending the last 20 minutes hadn't happened. Or maybe they were too busy trying to process the fact that they'd almost died. Either way, Zara was once again invisible. Except she wasn't. Not really. Because every few seconds someone would glance her way, a quick, furtive look, and then turn back to whatever they were doing, like they didn't know what to make of her now, like she'd become something unfamiliar. Ward was still on the phone, his voice low and clipped. She caught fragments of what he was saying. Full evacuation protocol. No, I don't have all the details yet. Federal jurisdiction, apparently. And then he turned slightly and his eyes met hers. He held her gaze for a beat, two, and then looked away. His jaw was tight. Liza was at the nurse's station, her hands moving over a keyboard with mechanical precision. She wasn't typing anything coherent. Zara could see that from here. Could see the way her fingers were just stabbing at keys like she needed something to do with her hands. When she finally looked up and saw Zara watching, her expression flickered through something Zara couldn't quite name. Resentment, maybe. Or fear. Vance. She turned. One of the younger nurses, Teresa, who'd been hired 2 months after Zara, was standing a few feet away, her arms crossed. Her face was pale, but there was something else in her eyes. Curiosity, maybe. Or the beginning of respect. Yeah? You okay? It was such a simple question, and yet Zara had no idea how to answer it. Was she okay? She'd just prevented a mass casualty event. She'd spoken a language she hadn't used in years, had stood up to a federal agent and a senior doctor, and had somehow been believed. And now the hospital was safe. The man who'd tried to warn them was dead or dying. And she was standing in the middle of the ER with her hands shaking and her heart trying to break out of her chest. "I'm fine," she said. Teresa didn't look convinced. What you did, I just translated." "No." Teresa shook her head. "You saved everyone. You know that, right?" Zara didn't know what to say to that. She settled for a shrug. Teresa studied her for another moment, then nodded slowly and turned back to her work. But the look in her eyes stayed with Zara long after she'd gone. The minutes ticked by. The ER filled back up. Patients returning to their rooms, families trickling back in with expressions that ranged from confused to terrified. The intercom kept announcing updates in that same calm, automated voice. "All clear has been issued. Normal operations resuming. Thank you for your cooperation." Like this was just another drill. Like people's lives hadn't been hanging by a thread. Zara found herself drifting toward the trauma bay where they'd brought the man. The gurney was still there, surrounded by monitors and IV poles, but the man himself was gone. Moved to surgery, maybe? Or the ICU? Or the morgue? She didn't know. She stood there for a long moment, staring at the empty space where he'd been. She could still feel the grip of his hand on her wrist, could still hear the rasp of his voice as he tried to get the words out. "Shukran. Ana Asif. Thank you. I'm sorry." What had he been sorry for? For the bombs? For putting her in this position? For dying before he could tell them if there were more? She didn't know that either. "Vance." She turned again. Hale was standing in the doorway, his arms still crossed, his expression unreadable. He looked tired, the kind of tired that went deeper than just lack of sleep. "Agent Hale." "Just Hale is fine." He stepped into the bay, his boots making soft clicks on the linoleum. "I need to ask you some questions. You up for that?" She nodded. "Yeah." He pulled out a small notebook, flipped it open. "How long have you known that dialect?" "Since I was a kid. My mother taught me." "Where's she from?" Zara hesitated. This was the part she had spent years avoiding, the part that marked her as different, but there was no point in hiding it now. "A village in the mountains, northeast of what used to be called Kazakhstan. It's not a country anymore, hasn't been for decades. The borders got redrawn after the Civil War." Hale scribbled something down. "And you're fluent?" "I was. It's been a while since I've spoken it." "How long?" 8 years, maybe 9. He looked up. "But you understood him?" "Yes." "How certain are you, percentage-wise?" She thought about it. The man's accent had been different from her mother's, rougher, more rural, but the core structure had been the same. The grammar, the phrasing, the way certain words clicked together. 95%. Maybe higher." Hale nodded slowly. "And the part about the bombs, you're sure that's what he said? Yes? Not a metaphor? Not some kind of coded language? No, he was being literal." Hale wrote that down too. Then he closed the notebook and looked at her with an expression that was almost apologetic. "I'm going to be honest with you, Vance. When you first stepped up, I thought you were wasting my time." She didn't flinch. "I know. But you were right, and if you hadn't spoken up—" He stopped, shook his head. "We'd be pulling bodies out of the rubble right now." She swallowed hard. "Is he—" "The asset? He's in surgery. Touch and go. Even if he makes it, we don't know if he'll be able to talk again." Hale paused. "Which means you might be the only person who knows what he said. We're going to need you to go over every word, every detail, anything he mentioned that you didn't have time to translate in the moment." He didn't say much else, just the location, the timer, and she trailed off. "And?" He apologized. Right before he coded. Hale's expression darkened. "Apologized for what?" "I don't know. He didn't say." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Hale tucked the notebook back into his vest. I'm going to need you to come in tomorrow. Federal building downtown. We'll do a full debrief. Am I in trouble? No, he said it firmly. You're a witness, and possibly the most valuable asset we've got right now. The word asset sat uncomfortably in her chest. She wasn't an asset. She was just a nurse who'd happened to know a language nobody else did. Hale must have seen something in her face because his expression softened. For what it's worth, you did the right thing, even when nobody was listening. They never listen, she said quietly. He tilted his head. What do you mean? She hadn't meant to say it out loud, but now that she had, there was no taking it back. People like me. We're supposed to stay quiet, keep our heads down, not make waves. She met his eyes. You learn pretty quickly that speaking up just gets you dismissed. Hale was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Well, not tonight. She didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded. Hale gave her one last look, then turned and walked out of the bay. She watched him go, and then she was alone again. Except she wasn't. Because when she turned around, Ward was standing in the doorway. He didn't say anything at first, just stood there, his hands shoved into the pockets of his white coat, his face unreadable. Zara braced herself for whatever was coming, an accusation, a dismissal, maybe even a threat. She'd seen the way he'd looked at her earlier, the contempt, the disbelief. But when he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. I owe you an apology. She blinked. What? I said I owe you an apology. He stepped into the bay, and she could see now that he looked exhausted, the kind of exhaustion that came from being proven wrong in the worst possible way. I didn't listen to you. I dismissed you. And if things had gone differently, he stopped, shook his head. You saved a lot of lives tonight, Vance, including mine. She didn't know what to say. This was the same man who'd spent the last 6 months treating her like she was barely competent, who'd signed off on her probation review with a note that she lacked confidence and initiative. And now he was apologizing. Thank you, she said finally. Ward nodded. He looked like he wanted to say more. But whatever it was, he kept it to himself. Instead, he just gave her a tired smile and walked out. Zara stood there for a long time after he'd gone, trying to process everything that had just happened. The bombs, the evacuation, Hale's questions, Ward's apology. It all felt surreal, like she'd stepped into someone else's life and hadn't quite figured out how to step back out. She became aware of movement behind her and turned to find Liza standing in the doorway. Unlike Ward, Liza didn't look apologetic. She looked angry. So that's it then? Liza said. You're a hero now. Zara's stomach tightened. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Liza stepped closer, her arms crossed. You know what's going to happen now, right? They're going to parade you around, put you on the news, make you the face of this whole thing. And the rest of us? We're going to be the ones who failed to recognize your potential. She spat the last words like they tasted bad. I'm not looking for recognition. Doesn't matter. You're going to get it anyway. Liza's eyes were hard. And for the record, I still don't trust you. Why not? Because people don't just suddenly become heroes, Vance. There's always something else going on, some angle, some hidden agenda. She leaned in slightly. So whatever game you're playing, just know I'm watching. Before Zara could respond, Liza turned and walked away, her footsteps sharp and echoing in the empty bay. Zara let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. Her hands were shaking again. She clenched them into fists and forced herself to breathe. In, out, in, out. She'd done the right thing. She'd saved lives. And yet somehow, she'd also made enemies. The thought sat heavy in her chest as she finally pushed herself away from the wall and headed back toward the nurse's station. The ER was almost back to normal now. Patients settled, machines beeping, the low hum of conversation filling the air. But there was an undercurrent of tension that hadn't been there before. People kept glancing at her, whispering when they thought she wasn't looking. She grabbed her water bottle from behind the desk and took a long drink. Her throat was dry, her head was pounding, and she wanted nothing more than to go home and collapse into bed. But her shift wasn't over. She still had another 10 hours to go. Vance? She turned to find Teresa standing beside her, holding a tablet. I need you to check on the patient in Bay 7. Post-evac vitals. Sure. She took the tablet and headed toward Bay 7, her legs moving on autopilot. The patient was an older man with a history of COPD brought in earlier for shortness of breath. He looked up when she entered, his face creased with worry. "Is it safe to be here?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "Everything's fine now. I heard there was a bomb." "There was, but it's been taken care of." He studied her for a moment. "You're the one who stopped it, aren't you?" She paused. "I just translated." "That's not what the nurses are saying." He smiled faintly. "They're saying you're a hero." Zara didn't respond. She just checked his vitals, made a note on the tablet, and gave him a reassuring smile before heading back out. But his words stayed with her. "They're saying you're a hero." She wasn't a hero. Heroes were people who ran into burning buildings or threw themselves in front of bullets. Heroes were selfless and brave, and everything Zara wasn't. She'd just spoken up. That was all. Except it wasn't all, because speaking up had changed everything. She could feel it in the way people looked at her now. The way Teresa's voice had softened when she'd asked if Zara was okay. The way Ward had apologized. The way Liza's anger had coiled around her like a snake. She'd spent 6 months being invisible, and now, suddenly, violently, she wasn't anymore. And she had no idea what to do with that. The rest of the shift passed in a blur. More patients, more vitals, more charting. But through it all, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted. Like she'd stepped through a door she couldn't close again. When her shift finally ended, she grabbed her bag from her locker and headed for the exit. The sun was just starting to rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. The air outside was cool and crisp, and for a moment, Zara just stood there and breathed it in. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Agent Hale. Federal Building, 2 p.m. tomorrow. Don't be late." She stared at the message for a long moment. Then she tucked her phone back into her pocket and started walking. Behind her, North Lake Medical Center loomed large and quiet, its windows reflecting the sunrise. Inside, the ER was already filling up again. New patients, new crises, new lives hanging in the balance. And somewhere deep in the building, in a room Zara would never see, a man lay unconscious, his secrets buried beneath layers of bandages and sedation. She didn't know if he would live, didn't know if there were more bombs, more threats, more things he'd tried to warn them about, but she knew one thing for certain. Whatever happened next, she wasn't invisible anymore. And that terrified her more than anything else. The apartment was exactly as she'd left it, small, cramped, and smelling faintly of the curry she'd microwaved 3 days ago. Zara dropped her bag by the door and stood there for a moment, trying to remember what normal felt like. The silence pressed in from all sides. No alarms, no radios crackling, no dying man gripping her wrist hard enough to leave bruises. She pulled off her scrubs and threw them in the hamper, then stood under the shower until the water ran cold. When she finally climbed into bed, her body was exhausted, but her mind wouldn't stop. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the man's face, heard his voice, felt the weight of those final words. "Ana Asif. I'm sorry." Sleep came eventually, but it was thin and fractured, full of dreams where she was running through endless hallways while explosions bloomed behind her. When her alarm went off at noon, she felt worse than she had before. She forced herself out of bed, made coffee she didn't drink, and stared at her closet trying to figure out what you wore to a federal debriefing. She settled on jeans and a plain sweater. Nothing that screamed, "Look at me," but nothing that screamed, "I don't care" either. Neutral, invisible. Except she wasn't invisible anymore. The federal building was downtown, a brutalist concrete block that looked like it had been designed to intimidate. Zara stood outside for a full minute, staring up at the tinted windows, before she finally pushed through the revolving doors. The lobby was all marble and metal detectors, staffed by security guards who looked like they ate nails for breakfast. She gave her name to the front desk. The woman behind the glass barely glanced at her before picking up a phone. "Vance is here." 2 minutes later, a young man in a suit appeared and gestured for her to follow. He didn't introduce himself, didn't make small talk, just led her through a maze of hallways and locked doors until they reached a conference room on the 4th floor. He opened the door, stepped aside, and left without a word. Hale was already inside, sitting at a long table with a laptop open in front of him. He looked up when she entered and waved her toward a chair. "You're early." "Traffic was light." Lucky you. He closed the laptop and leaned back. How you holding up? Fine? His eyes narrowed slightly, like he didn't believe her but wasn't going to push. We're going to record this, audio only. That okay with you? She nodded. Yeah. He pressed a button on a small recorder sitting on the table. This is Agent Marcus Hale, Federal Security Division, conducting debrief interview with Zara Vance, witness to Incident 047 at North Lake Medical Center, Seattle. Date is October 19th. Time is 14:03. He looked at her. State your full name for the record. Zara Elise Vance. And your current occupation? Registered nurse, North Lake Medical Center. How long have you been employed there? 6 months. Prior to that? I was finishing my nursing degree. Before that, I worked retail. Hale made a note on a pad in front of him. Let's talk about last night. Walk me through everything that happened from the moment the asset was brought into the ER. She did. She told him about the agents bursting in, about the man screaming, about the way everyone had frozen. She told him about recognizing the dialect, about stepping forward even though she knew it would make her a target. She told him every word the man had said, every detail she could remember. Hale listened without interrupting. When she finished, he said, You mentioned he apologized, right before he coded. Yes. Any idea what that meant? No. Best guess? She hesitated. Maybe he felt guilty for putting people in danger. Or maybe he knew he wasn't going to make it and wanted someone to know he tried. Hale wrote that down. The dialect you spoke. You said your mother taught you. Where is she now? Dead. Cancer. 3 years ago. His expression softened slightly. I'm sorry. It's fine. Any other family who speaks it? No. It was just her and me. So you're the only person in this country who knows that language. It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. Probably. It's not exactly common. Hale leaned forward. Which makes you extremely valuable, Vance. You understand that, right? She didn't like the way he said valuable, like she was a tool instead of a person. I understand I got lucky. Lucky? He shook his head. You stepped into a situation where 18 federal linguists had already failed. You got a dying man to trust you in under a minute. You identified a credible threat and communicated it clearly under pressure. That's not luck. That's skill. She didn't know what to say to that, so she just looked at her hands. The asset is still in surgery, Hale continued. If he survives, we're going to need you to talk to him again. And if he doesn't, he paused. There are other situations where your skill set could be useful. What kind of situations? The kind I can't talk about in an uncleared room. He closed the notepad. We'd like to bring you on as a contractor, translating mostly. Maybe some field consultation if the need arises. Zara looked up sharply. I'm a nurse. You can be both. I don't know anything about intelligence work. You don't need to. You just need to translate. He met her eyes. Think about it. We'll pay you well. And it would give you a chance to use a skill you've been burying. The words landed harder than he probably intended. She thought about her mother, about the nights spent learning the old stories, the grammar, the songs, about how she'd locked all of it away the first time someone at school had made fun of her accent, about how she'd spent years trying to be smaller, quieter, less other. I'll think about it, she said finally. Hale nodded. That's all I'm asking. He stood, ending the interview. I'll walk you out. They were halfway down the hall when a door opened and a woman stepped out. Late 50s, steel gray hair, suit that probably cost more than Zara's rent. She looked at Hale, then at Zara, and her expression shifted to something that might have been interest. This her? The woman asked. Director Castellanos, this is Zara Vance. Vance, Director Castellanos. She runs the division. Castellanos extended a hand. Her grip was firm, businesslike. I've been reading your file. Impressive work last night. Thank you. Agent Hale filled you in on our offer. He did. And? Zara hesitated. I said I'd think about it. Castellanos smiled faintly. Smart. Don't let him pressure you. She glanced at Hale. We're not in the business of recruiting people who don't want to be here. Understood, Hale said. Castellanos turned back to Zara. If you decide you're interested, we'll run a background check. Standard procedure. Nothing invasive. She paused. But I'll be honest with you, Ms. Vance. People with your skill set don't come along often, and we need people we can trust. There was something in the way she said trust that made Zara's skin prickle, like this was a test she hadn't signed up for. I'll keep that in mind, she said. Castellanos nodded and disappeared back into her office. Hale walked Zara the rest of the way to the lobby in silence. At the door, he handed her a business card. My direct line. Call if you need anything, or if you have questions. She took the card and tucked it into her pocket. Thanks. And Vance? He waited until she looked at him. What you did last night, it mattered. Don't let anyone tell you different. She nodded and walked out into the cold afternoon air. The walk back to her car felt longer than it should have. Her mind was spinning, trying to process everything that had just happened. A federal contractor, field consultation, skills she'd been burying. She didn't know if she wanted any of it, didn't know if she could handle any of it. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, saw the news. Nice work. T. It took her a second to place the initial, Teresa, from the hospital. Zara stared at the message, then opened her browser and typed North Lake Medical Center bomb into the search bar. The results hit her like a punch to the gut. Federal agents thwart hospital bombing in Seattle. Nurse saves thousands in late-night evacuation. Hero translator stops terror attack at North Lake Medical. There were photos. Grainy shots of the hospital exterior, agents in tactical gear, and worse, a photo of her. It was from her hospital ID badge, blown up and pixelated, but unmistakably her. The caption read, Zara Vance, 26, used her knowledge of a rare dialect to communicate with a federal asset and prevent a catastrophic explosion. She felt her stomach drop. She scrolled through the articles, each one worse than the last. Quotes from hospital staff she barely knew. Speculation about her background. A sidebar analyzing the importance of multilingual healthcare workers in national security. Her phone buzzed again. Another text, this time from a number she didn't recognize. Is this Zara Vance? I'm a reporter with the Seattle Times. I'd love to talk to you about last night. Then another. Channel 7 News here. Can we schedule an interview? And another. You're an inspiration. My daughter wants to be a nurse because of you. She turned her phone off and shoved it into her bag. By the time she got home, there were 3 news vans parked on her street. She drove past her building, circled the block twice, and finally parked 6 blocks away. She walked back with her hood up and her head down, praying no one would recognize her. She made it to her door without being spotted, locked herself inside, and closed all the blinds. Then she sat on the floor with her back against the wall and tried to breathe. This was what Liza had warned her about. The spotlight, the attention, the suffocating weight of being turned into something she wasn't. She didn't want to be a hero. She didn't want reporters digging into her past, asking about her mother, turning her heritage into a headline. She just wanted to go back to being invisible. Her phone, still off, sat in her bag like a ticking bomb. She knew what would happen when she turned it back on. More messages, more requests, more people wanting a piece of her. And underneath it all, the hospital. Ward, Liza. The shift she was supposed to work tomorrow night. She didn't sleep that night. Just sat in the dark, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the world to move on. It didn't. When she finally dragged herself into North Lake the next evening, the whispers started before she even made it through the doors. Nurses clustered in groups, their conversations stopping abruptly when she walked past. Patients stared. An older woman in the waiting room actually pointed. Zara kept her head down and headed straight for the locker room. She changed into her scrubs, clipped her ID badge to her pocket, and tried to pretend everything was normal. Teresa found her before her shift even started. Oh my God, Zara, have you seen the news? Yeah. Everyone's talking about you. They're calling you a hero. I'm not. Are you kidding? You saved the entire hospital. I translated, that's all. Teresa looked like she wanted to argue, but something in Zara's expression stopped her. Okay, well, just so you know, there are reporters outside. Security's keeping them back, but they're asking for you. Great. And Dr. Ward wants to see you. He said to come by his office before you clock in. Zara's stomach tightened. Did he say why? No, but he didn't look mad. That was something, at least. Zara finished tying her shoes and headed toward Ward's office. The The door was open, and he was sitting at his desk, staring at his computer screen. He looked up when she knocked. "Vance, come in. Close the door." She did. He gestured to the chair across from him, and she sat. "I've been fielding calls all day," he said without preamble. "Hospital administration, the press, the board of directors, everyone wants to know about you." "I didn't ask for this." "I know." He leaned back in his chair. "But it's happening anyway, and we need to figure out how to handle it." "What's there to handle? I did my job." "You did more than that, and now you're a liability." The word hit her like a slap. "Excuse me?" "Not because of anything you did," he said quickly, "but because of what you represent. The hospital's getting scrutiny. Questions about our hiring practices, our language services, our emergency protocols, and all of it's tied to you." "So, what are you saying?" He hesitated. "I'm saying the board is considering putting you on paid leave, just until things calm down. You're benching me. We're protecting you." "By making me disappear?" She felt anger rising in her chest, hot and sharp. "That's what you've always wanted, isn't it? For me to stay quiet and out of the way. That's not fair." "Isn't it?" She stood. "I've been here 6 months, and you've treated me like I'm incompetent, like I don't belong. And the one time I prove otherwise, you want to shove me back in the corner." Ward's face flushed. "I apologize for that." "You apologize because you got caught, not because you were wrong." She turned toward the door. "If the board wants to bench me, fine, but don't pretend it's for my protection." "Vance, She walked out and slammed the door behind her. The rest of the shift was a disaster. Patients kept asking her about the bombing. Nurses treated her like she was fragile, like one wrong word would make her shatter. And Liza? Liza didn't say a word, just watched her from across the ER with an expression that could have been resentment or vindication, or both. By the time her break came, Zara was ready to scream. She locked herself in the supply closet and turned her phone back on. The notifications exploded: texts, emails, missed calls. She scrolled through them with numb fingers until one message stopped her cold. It was from Hale. "Asset woke up, asking for you. Can you come in?" She stared at the message for a long moment. Then she typed back. "When?" "Now." "I'll send a car." She didn't think, just grabbed her jacket, clocked out, and told the charge nurse she had a family emergency. 20 minutes later, a black sedan pulled up outside the hospital, and she climbed in without looking back. The driver didn't speak, just drove through the city in silence until they reached a building Zara didn't recognize, plain, unmarked, surrounded by fences and cameras. The driver flashed a badge at the gate, and they were waved through. Inside, Hale was waiting. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept since their last conversation. "Thanks for coming." "What's going on?" "He woke up 2 hours ago. Disoriented, but stable. He's been asking for someone who speaks his language." Hale started walking, and Zara followed. "We tried bringing in a few of the linguists again, but he shut down the second they started talking. I think he only trusts you." They stopped outside a door flanked by 2 guards. Hale nodded at them, and they stepped aside. "I'll be watching from the observation room. If you need me, just say the word." Zara took a breath and pushed the door open. The man was sitting up in bed, his chest wrapped in bandages, an IV dripping clear fluid into his arm. He looked smaller than he had in the ER, frailer, older. But his eyes were sharp, and they locked onto her the moment she entered. "Anahuna," she said quietly. "I'm here." His expression crumbled. Inti fahemti. You understood." "Na'am." Yes. He let out a shaky breath. Shukran jazilan." "Thank you. Thank you so much." She pulled a chair close to the bed and sat. "Ma ismak." "What's your name?" "Idris." "Idris? Limatha kanet al-kanabel?" "Idris, why were there bombs?" His face darkened. La yumkin an ukhbirak kul shay. Hem yusma'un. I can't tell you everything. They're listening." "Man?" "Who?" He glanced toward the observation window. Them. Zara felt a chill run down her spine. She leaned in closer, lowering her voice. "Idris, ana huna li musa'adatak,
لكن يجب أن تعرفان ما يجري. Idris, I'm here to help you, but you have to tell me what's happening.
He stared at her for a long moment. Then he whispered, Al-Kanabal, Lam takun al-Hadaf, Kanat al-Tahaluf. The bombs weren't the target, they were the distraction. Her blood went cold. Tahaluf lamada? Distraction for what? Before he could answer, the door burst open. Hale strode in, his face tight. That's enough. Zara turned. He was just about to tell me. I know what he was about to tell you, and it's classified. Hale looked at Idris, then back at Zara. We need to talk. Outside. Now. She stood slowly, her mind racing. Idris grabbed her wrist again, his grip weak but urgent. La tatakibihim, he whispered. Don't trust them. She pulled her hand free and followed Hale into the hallway. The door closed behind them with a heavy click. What the hell was that? She demanded. That, Hale said slowly, was a breach of protocol. You weren't authorized to ask questions. You told me to talk to him. I told you to translate, not interrogate. Boo! He said the bombs were a distraction. A distraction for what? Hale's jaw tightened. That's classified. Then why am I here? Because he wouldn't talk to anyone else. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. Listen to me, Vance. There are things happening here that are bigger than you realize. Things I can't explain. But if you keep pushing, you're going to end up in a situation you're not prepared for. Like what? He didn't answer, just stared at her with an expression she couldn't read. And that's when Zara realized, whatever Idris had been trying to tell her, Hale already knew, and he didn't want her to know it too. She took a step back. What aren't you telling me? Vance, what was he distracting them from? Hale's radio crackled. A voice, sharp and urgent. All units, we have a situation. Repeat, we have a situation. Federal building downtown. Possible secondary device. The color drained from Hale's face. He grabbed the radio. Say again? Federal building. Bomb squad en route. Evacuating now. Zara's heart stopped. The federal building. Where she'd been yesterday. Where Castellanos had her office. Hale was already moving, barking orders into the radio. Zara grabbed his arm. The bombs at the hospital were a test, he said grimly, and now they're doing it for real. Hale's boots echoed down the hallway as he sprinted toward the exit, radio pressed to his ear, his voice a staccato burst of commands. Zara ran after him, her mind struggling to catch up with what he'd just said. A test. The hospital had been a test, which meant whoever planted those bombs had been watching, waiting to see if they'd be found. And now they knew the protocols, the response times, the weaknesses. They burst through the doors into the parking garage. Hale wrenched open the driver's side of an unmarked SUV and jabbed a finger at the passenger seat. Get in! She didn't hesitate. The engine roared to life before she'd even buckled her seatbelt, and then they were tearing out of the garage, tires squealing against concrete. Hale's hands were white-knuckled on the wheel, his jaw set. How many people are in that building right now? Zara asked. Too many. He blew through a red light, swerving around a delivery truck. Federal offices don't close until 6. We've got maybe 300 staff plus whoever's in for late meetings. And the bomb squad, they're 15 minutes out, maybe 10 if they push it. That's not fast enough. I know. The radio crackled again. A different voice this time, calmer but edged with urgency. Hale, this is Castellanos. Where are you? He grabbed the radio. En route to your location, ETA 7 minutes. Don't. I'm evacuating with my team. The building's being cleared floor by floor. You need to coordinate from the command post. With respect, Director, I'm not sitting this one out. There was a pause, then, fine. But if you're coming, bring the translator. Zara's stomach dropped. Hale glanced at her, his expression grim. You heard her. Why would she? Because if this is the same group that hit the hospital, they might be using the same language. And you're the only person we've got who understands it. He swerved around a corner, barely missing a pedestrian. If there's a message, a warning, anything, we need you to read it. She wanted to argue, wanted to say she was a nurse, not a bomb technician, not a federal agent. But the memory of Idris's face stopped her. La tatikibihim. Don't trust them. What had he meant? Trust who? Hal? Castellanos? The entire federal apparatus that had dragged her into this? She didn't know, but she knew that if she walked away now, people would die, and she'd have to live with that. Okay, she said quietly. The federal building loomed ahead, its glass facade reflecting the late afternoon sun. The street in front of it was chaos. Police cruisers blocking traffic, uniformed officers shouting at confused pedestrians, a growing crowd of onlookers being pushed back behind hastily erected barriers. Hale pulled up to the inner perimeter, flashed his badge at the officer manning the blockade, and they were waved through. He parked 20 yards from the main entrance and killed the engine. Stay close to me. Don't touch anything. And if I tell you to run, you run. Clear? Clear. They climbed out. The air smelled like exhaust and fear. People were streaming out of the building in ragged clusters, some moving quickly, others frozen in place, staring back at the structure like they couldn't believe they'd just been inside it. Zara spotted Castellanos near a command van, surrounded by agents in tactical gear. The director's steel gray hair was pulled back tight, her face a mask of controlled fury. Hale strode toward her. What's the situation? Anonymous tip came in 20 minutes ago. Male caller, distorted voice. Said there's a device in the sub-basement, mechanical room adjacent to the server farm. Castellanos' eyes flicked to Zara. You're Vance. Yes, ma'am. Hale says you might be able to help. That true? I don't know. Depends on what you need. Castellanos pulled out her phone and tapped the screen. Listen to this. A recording played. The voice was garbled, run through some kind of filter, but underneath it, Zara could hear the cadence, the structure. Her breath caught. Tahet al-mabna, al-ghurfa al-mikanikia, khamsa wa thalathin daqiqa. Under the building, the mechanical room, 35 minutes. The recording ended. Castellanos looked at her. Well? He's speaking the same dialect, Zara said. He said the device is under the building, in the mechanical room. He gave a time, 35 minutes, but that was 20 minutes ago, Hale finished grimly, which means we've got 15 left. Castellanos swore under her breath. Bomb squad? 12 minutes out. Then they're not going to make it. She turned to one of the agents. Where's the building engineer? Right here. A man in coveralls pushed through the crowd, his face pale and slick with sweat. I'm Garrett. I run facilities. Mechanical room in the sub-basement. How do we access it? There's a service elevator on the north side, but it's card-locked. Or you can take the stairs from the parking garage. He pulled out a key card, hands shaking. I can get you in, but what? That room's a maze. HVAC, electrical conduits, server cooling systems. If you don't know what you're looking for, you'll never find it in time. Castellanos looked at Hale. Hale looked at Zara, and Zara realized with cold clarity what they were about to ask. No, she said. Vance, I'm not trained for this. I don't know anything about explosives. You don't need to, Hale said. We just need you to identify anything written in that dialect. Instructions, warnings, whatever. Garrett can guide us through the room, and you translate. That's it. That's insane. It's the only option we've got. His voice was calm, but his eyes were hard. If we wait for the bomb squad, it'll be too late. And if we go in blind, we might trip something we shouldn't. Zara's heart was hammering. She thought about running, about getting in a cab, going home, locking the door, and pretending none of this had ever happened. But then she thought about the people still streaming out of the building, the ones who hadn't made it out yet, the ones who would die if that bomb went off. How much time? She asked. Castellanos checked her watch. 14 minutes? Zara closed her eyes, opened them. Fine. Let's go. Garrett led them toward the north entrance, his keycard already in hand. Hale was on his radio, coordinating with someone, probably the bomb squad, telling them to haul ass. Castellanos stayed behind, barking orders at the perimeter team. And Zara followed Garrett and Hale into the building, her legs moving on autopilot, her mind screaming at her to stop. The interior was eerily quiet. Emergency lights glowed in the corners, casting long shadows across the marble floors. Their footsteps echoed. Garrett swiped his card at the elevator, and the doors slid open with a soft chime that sounded obscene in the silence. They stepped inside. Garrett hit the button for the sub-basement. The doors closed. You don't have to do this, Hale said quietly.
Yes, I do. The elevator descended. Zara counted the seconds, tried to slow her breathing.
The car shuddered slightly as it passed the ground floor, then kept going. Down, down. The doors opened onto a concrete hallway lit by flickering fluorescents. The air was cooler here, tinged with the smell of oil and metal. Garrett stepped out first, orienting himself. This way. They followed him down the hall, past rows of utility panels and locked doors. The sound of machinery grew louder, a low thrumming hum that Zara could feel in her chest. Garrett stopped at a heavy steel door marked mechanical, authorized personnel only. He swiped his card. The lock clicked. He pushed the door open. The room beyond was massive, a cathedral of pipes and ducts and industrial equipment. Generators the size of cars squatted in rows, their surfaces slick with condensation. Overhead, a tangle of conduits snaked toward the ceiling. The noise was deafening. "Where do we start?" Hale shouted over the din. Garrett pointed toward the back. "Cooling systems that way. If they wanted maximum damage, they'd hit the servers, take out our data infrastructure." They moved deeper into the room, weaving between machines. Zara's eyes scanned every surface, looking for anything that didn't belong. A bag, a wire, a scrap of paper. But there was too much. Too much equipment, too many shadows. "How much time?" she called. Hale checked his watch. 11 minutes. They reached the cooling system, a cluster of massive tanks connected by thick pipes. Garrett circled around them, his flashlight beam cutting through the gloom. "I don't see... Wait. There." Zara followed his gaze. Tucked against the base of one of the tanks was a black duffel bag, its fabric worn and nondescript, but it was the only thing in the room that didn't belong. Hale moved toward it, slow and careful. He crouched down, unzipped it halfway, and froze. "We've got a device." Zara's breath stopped. Hale pulled the zipper the rest of the way, exposing the contents. Bricks of something pale and clay-like, wrapped in plastic. Wires in red, blue, yellow. A digital timer counting down. And taped to the inside of the bag, a sheet of paper covered in handwritten text. Hale pulled out his phone and took a photo. Then he looked at Zara. "Can you read this?" She knelt beside him, her hands shaking. The handwriting was messy, the ink smudged in places, but the words were clear. "هذا هو انتحار. إن حاولت أن توقفه ستفجر الواحدة الثانية. المفتاح هو في الكلمة." Her stomach turned to ice. "What does it say?" Holly demanded. "It says it's a suicide switch. If you try to stop it, a second device will detonate. The key is in the word." "What word?" She read it again, slower this time. "Al-Kalima, the word. But it doesn't say which word." Hale swore. He grabbed his radio. "Castellanos, we've found the device, but there's a problem." "What kind of problem?" "There's a second device, rigged to blow if we tamper with this one." The radio hissed. "Where's the second device?" "We don't know. The note says the key is in the word, but it doesn't specify." "Then find it. You've got 9 minutes." Hale looked at Garrett. "Is there anywhere else in this building where someone could plant a bomb without being seen?" Garrett's face was white. I don't know. Maybe the air ducts, the elevator shafts?" "That's not good enough. We need specifics." Zara stared at the note, her mind racing. The key is in the word. What word? Was it hidden somewhere else in the room? Was it something Idris had said? She thought back to their conversation, to the fragments of language she'd translated, and then it hit her. "The distraction," she said. Hale turned. "What?" "Idris said the bombs at the hospital were a distraction. What if this is the same thing? What if this device isn't the real threat? Then what is?" She scanned the note again. Her eyes caught on a phrase she'd almost missed. Al-Waheda al-Thaniya, the second device. But in the dialect, Waheda could mean device or it could mean unit, as in a separate location. "It's not in this building," she said slowly. "The second device, it's somewhere else." Hale's eyes widened. "Where?" She didn't know. She looked at the note again, desperate for another clue. And then she saw it. A single word scrawled at the bottom, almost like an afterthought. Shifa. Healing. Her blood went cold. The hospital. The second device is at the hospital. Hale grabbed his radio, his voice sharp. Castellanos, we need units at Northlake Medical Center. Now, there's a second device.
Are you sure? No, but we can't afford to be wrong. Evacuating now.
What about the device in the federal building?
Hale looked at the timer. 7 minutes. Then he looked at Zara.
Can you stay here and keep reading? See if there's anything else we're missing?
What are you going to do?
I'm going to the hospital.
He stood, already moving toward the door.
Garrett, you're with me. Vance, the bomb squad's 4 minutes out. When they get here, show them this note. Tell them everything.
Wait!
But he was already gone, his footsteps echoing down the hall. Garrett scrambled after him, leaving Zara alone in the mechanical room with a bomb counting down and a note she didn't fully understand. She stared at the timer. 6 minutes, 43 seconds, 42, 41, 1. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the note. She forced herself to read it again, line by line, looking for anything she'd missed. But there was nothing. Just the warning about the second device and the word Shifa. Unless... She looked at the timer again. The numbers were counting down in a steady rhythm, but there was something off about the display. The digits weren't quite aligned, like the panel had been hastily soldered together. She leaned closer, squinting, and then she saw it. A second wire, thinner than the others, running from the timer to a small black box tucked beneath the explosives. The box had a tiny antenna poking out of the top, a remote trigger. Her heart stopped. If the timer hit 0, the bomb would go off, but if someone sent a signal to that black box, it would go off immediately, which meant evacuating the building wasn't enough, which meant the radio on the floor crackled. Castellanos' voice, tight with barely controlled panic. Hale, we've got a problem. The hospital's reporting a fire alarm in the sub-basement, same location as the oxygen manifold. Zara grabbed the radio. It's not a fire, it's the second device. You need to get everyone out. Who is this? Zara Vance. Hale left me with the device. Listen to me. The second bomb is remote triggered. If someone sends a signal, it'll detonate. You need to jam all frequencies in a 2-mile radius. There was a pause. Then, we don't have that capability on site. It'll take time to... We don't have time, Zara looked at the timer. 5 minutes. If this bomb goes off, it'll send the signal. Both devices are linked. Then disarm it. I can't. I'm not trained. Then you'd better learn fast. The radio went silent. Zara stared at the device, her mind spinning. She didn't know anything about bombs. Didn't know which wire to cut, which component to remove. But she knew one thing. Doing nothing wasn't an option. She pulled out her phone and took a photo of the device, then another of the note. She sent them both to Hale with a message. Need instructions, now. The reply came back in seconds. Bomb squad, 3 minutes out. Don't touch anything. 3 minutes. The timer showed 4 minutes, 18 seconds, which meant if she waited, it would be too close. If the squad was even 30 seconds late, the bomb would detonate, and the hospital would go with it. She looked at the wires, red, blue, yellow. In movies, it was always the red one. But this wasn't a movie. This was real, and if she guessed wrong, hundreds of people would die. Her phone buzzed, a text from a number she didn't recognize. Cut the blue wire? She stared at it. Then another message came through. Trust me. No name, no explanation. Just 2 words. Her finger hovered over Hale's contact. She could call him, ask if he'd sent someone to help. But there wasn't time. The timer showed 3 minutes, 51 seconds. She looked at the blue wire, followed it from the timer to the black box. If she cut it, would the remote trigger fail? Or would it set off the bomb immediately? She didn't know. But the alternative was waiting, and waiting meant death. She pulled a multi-tool from Garrett's abandoned bag, hands shaking so badly she almost dropped it. She opened the wire cutters, positioned them around the blue wire, and held her breath. Trust me. She squeezed. The wire snapped. Nothing happened. For a long, agonizing second, Zara waited for the explosion, for the world to end in fire and noise. But the timer kept counting. 3 minutes, 29 seconds, 28, 27. She let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. The remote trigger was dead, which meant the hospital was safe, but this bomb was still live. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. She turned to see 3 figures in blast suits rushing toward her, carrying equipment cases. The bomb squad. The lead technician knelt beside her, his voice muffled behind the helmet. "Ma'am, I need you to step back." She moved away, her legs barely holding her up. The technician opened his case and pulled out a scanner, running it over the device. His partner moved in with a pair of cutters, and the third started unpacking something that looked like a portable X-ray machine. "Timer's at 3 minutes," the lead said. "We've got time, barely." Zara watched as they worked, their movements precise and unhurried despite the countdown. One of them peeled back the tape holding the note, examining the adhesive. Another traced the wires with a gloved finger. "This is a decoy," the lead said suddenly. Zara's heart lurched. "What?" "The timer's real, but the charge is inert. It's got weight, but it's not explosive. We're looking at sand or clay wrapped in plastic." He stood, pulling off his helmet. "Someone wanted us to find this. Wanted us to waste time on it. But the note was a diversion." He looked at her, his expression grim. "Which means the real bomb is somewhere else." And then the lights went out. The room plunged into darkness so complete Zara couldn't see her own hands. She heard the technician swearing, fumbling for flashlights. Beams of light cut through the black, sweeping across the machinery. "Generator's down," one of them said. "Someone cut the power." Zara's phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. "Wrong building. Run." She didn't think, just turned and sprinted toward the door, her hands outstretched, feeling for the walls. Behind her, the technician shouted, but she didn't stop. She hit the hallway and kept running, following the emergency lights toward the elevator. The doors were closed. She jabbed the button, but nothing happened. No power. Stairs. She veered left, found the stairwell, and started climbing. Her lungs burned. Her legs screamed. But she didn't slow down. She burst out onto the ground floor and nearly collided with Castellanos. The director grabbed her shoulders, steadying her. "Vance, what the hell? It's a decoy. The bomb in the basement is fake. The real one's—" Her phone rang. Hale's name on the screen. She answered, gasping for breath. "Zara, listen to me." His voice was tight, controlled. "We found the second device. It's in the hospital, but it's not in the sub-basement. It's in the ER, hidden in the supply closet on the west wing." Her stomach dropped. "How much time?" "Timer says 90 seconds. Bomb squad's working on it, but..." His voice broke. "There are still patients in the building. We couldn't evacuate everyone." She closed her eyes. Saw Teresa's face, Ward's, even Liza's. People she'd worked beside, argued with, resented. People who were about to die because she hadn't figured it out fast enough. "Can they disarm it?" she whispered. "They're trying." The line went quiet, except for the sound of Hale's breathing. 60 seconds, 50, 40. And then from somewhere in the background a voice shouted, "Clear! Device neutralized!" Hale let out a breath. "We're good. We're good. It's over." Zara sank to the floor, her back against the wall. Castellanos crouched beside her, her expression unreadable. "You did it," the director said quietly. Zara shook her head. "I didn't do anything. You kept us from walking into a trap. You identified the language, you made the connection, and you bought us the time we needed." Castellanos stood and offered her a hand. "That's more than most trained agents could have done." Zara took the hand and let herself be pulled to her feet. Her legs felt like jelly. Her hands were still shaking. Castellanos' radio crackled. A new voice. Unfamiliar. "Director, we've got movement on the perimeter. Vehicle approaching from the east. No plates, no markings." Castellanos' expression hardened. "Lock it down. Nobody in or out." But before the voice could respond, the radio cut to static. And then Zara's phone buzzed one last time. "They know who you are now, and they're coming for you." Zara stared at the message, the words burning into her retinas. "They know who you are now, and they're coming for you." Her thumb hovered over the screen, ready to show Castellanos, but something stopped her. Whoever had sent these texts had known about the blue wire, had known the basement bomb was a decoy, had known things that should have been impossible to know unless they were either inside the operation or watching it unfold from somewhere very close. Castellanos was already barking orders into her radio, coordinating a perimeter lockdown. Around them, agents moved with practiced efficiency, weapons drawn, eyes scanning every shadow. But Zara felt exposed, like a target painted on her back that only she could see. Vance, Castellanos' voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. Who was that text from? Zara's finger moved before she could second-guess herself. She deleted the message. Wrong number. The lie tasted bitter, but the director's eyes were already moving past her, tracking something across the lobby. Get her inside the command van, now! Two agents materialized on either side of Zara, their hands firm on her elbows, guiding her toward the armored vehicle parked at the curb. She didn't resist. The van's interior was a cramped space filled with monitors and communication equipment, the air thick with tension and recycled breath. They pushed her into a seat and closed the door, sealing her in. Through the tinted window, she watched Castellanos coordinating the response. The director moved like someone conducting an orchestra, every gesture precise, every word measured. But there was something in her expression that Zara couldn't quite read. Not fear. Not exactly. More like recognition. Like she'd been expecting this. Zara's phone buzzed again. She pulled it out, shielding the screen with her body. Check the hospital's security footage. Camera 7, West Wing supply closet. 400 hours yesterday. Her pulse spiked. Yesterday morning. 4 hours before her shift started. Hours before Idris had been brought in screaming. She typed back quickly. Who are you? The response came immediately. Someone who knows what they tried to bury. Check the footage, you'll understand. The van door opened. Hale climbed in, his face streaked with soot, his eyes hard. He looked at her for a long moment before speaking. You okay? Fine. That's not what I asked. She met his gaze. I'm alive. That's more than some people can say. He nodded slowly and dropped into the seat across from her. For a few seconds, they just sat there in silence, the weight of everything that had happened pressing down like a physical thing. The hospital's secure, he said finally. Bomb squad cleared the device. No casualties. And the federal building? Still sweeping it. The basement bomb was exactly what you said. A decoy. High-quality fake, but fake nonetheless. He paused. Whoever planned this knew our protocols. Knew how we'd respond. They were testing us. For what? That's what we need to find out. He pulled out a tablet and tapped the screen. Idris is awake again. Asking for you. Zara's stomach tightened. What does he want? He won't say. Just keeps repeating your name. Hale's eyes searched hers. I need you to talk to him. Find out what he knows about the second attack. Find out who he's working with. He said not to trust you. The words came out before she could stop them. Hale went very still. He said what? In the hospital room. Before you came in. He told me not to trust them. Not to trust. She trailed off, the weight of the admission settling between them. Not to trust who, Zara? She didn't answer. Couldn't. Because the truth was she didn't know who to trust anymore. The anonymous texts, Idris's warning, the perfectly timed attacks that suggested someone on the inside feeding information. It all added up to something rotten, something that went deeper than a single bomber with a grudge. Hale leaned forward. Listen to me. I know you're scared. I know this is overwhelming. But if Idris told you not to trust people, there's a reason, and I need to know what that reason is. Why? So you can bury it? His expression darkened. You think I'm part of this? I don't know what to think. Then think about this. His voice dropped, barely above a whisper. 2 coordinated attacks in 2 days. Bombs planted in federal facilities and a civilian hospital. A dying man who speaks a language almost nobody knows, warning about threats that turn out to be real. And now someone's sending you anonymous texts telling you to run. He paused. That's not random, Vance. That's targeted, which means someone wants you involved. The question is why. She wanted to argue, but he was right. Every instinct screamed that she was being manipulated, moved like a piece on a board she couldn't see. But by who? And toward what end? Take me to Idris, she said. Hale studied her for another moment, then nodded. Let's go. The drive back to the secure facility was silent. Zara kept her phone hidden, checking it every few minutes, but no new messages came. Outside, the city rolled past. Normal people living normal lives, completely unaware of how close they'd come to disaster. She envied them. When they arrived, the building looked the same as before. Same fences, same cameras, same guards who barely acknowledged their existence. But something felt different. The air was charged, electric, like everyone was waiting for the other shoe to drop. They bypassed the main entrance and went through a side door, down a corridor Zara didn't recognize. Hale swiped his card at a reinforced door, and they stepped into observation room. Through the one-way glass, she could see Idris lying in bed, his eyes open and staring at the ceiling. "He's been like that for an hour," Hale said. "Won't eat, won't talk to anyone, just stares." "Has he tried to hurt himself?" "No, but the psych eval says he's exhibiting signs of severe trauma, dissociation maybe, or he's just shut down." Zara looked at the broken man on the other side of the glass. He looked smaller than he had before, diminished, like something vital had been carved out of him. "Let me try." Hale hesitated. "If he says anything about operational details, I'll tell you." He didn't look convinced, but he opened the door anyway. Zara stepped through into the room. The air was cooler here, sterile. Idris didn't move when she entered, didn't even seem to register her presence. She pulled a chair close to the bed and sat. "Idris, Anahuna." "I'm here." His eyes shifted, found her face. Something flickered behind them. Relief, maybe, or recognition. Anti-Rajati. "You came back." "Na'am, Ana Rajatu." "Yes, I came back." She kept her voice soft, non-threatening. "Idris, yajibu an tukhbirni ma yajri. Manhum, limada fa'alu hada." "You need to tell me what's happening. Who are they? Why did they do this?" He closed his eyes. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "Laizu hum, huwa, wahdahu." Not they. He. Only one man. Her heart stuttered. "Manhua? Who is he?" "Alladhi ka'ana yajib an yahmina, alladhi khana kul shay." The one who was supposed to protect us. The one who betrayed everything. "Ismuhu Idris, ukhbirni biismihi." His name. Tell me his name. His eyes opened again, and they were wet with tears. "Sayaktuluni idha qultu." He'll kill me if I tell. "Anti amina huna, la yastatiu an yasila ilayka." You're safe here. He can't reach you. Idris laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "Anti la tafamin, huwa laisa hunaka, huwa huna, huwa daiman huna." You don't understand. He's not out there. He's in here. He's always in here. The words hit her like ice water. He's in here, inside the facility, inside the federal apparatus, inside the very system that was supposed to be protecting them. Ein Fihada al-Mabna. Where? In this building? But before Idris could answer, the door burst open. Castellanos strode in, her face tight. "That's enough." Zara stood. "He was about to tell me—" "I know what he was about to tell you, and this interview is over." Castellanos looked at one of the guards. "Sedate him." "Wait," Zara started, but the guard was already moving, pulling a syringe from his pocket. Idris's eyes went wide with panic. He tried to sit up, tried to pull away, but he was too weak. The needle slid into his IV port, and within seconds his eyes were fluttering closed. Zara rounded on Castellanos. "What the hell was that?" "That was me protecting an asset who's clearly unstable." The director's voice was cold, controlled. "He's been through severe trauma. Anything he says right now is unreliable." "He was lucid. He was trying to warn me. He was making paranoid accusations that have no basis in fact." Castellanos stepped closer, her eyes hard. "Let me be very clear, Ms. Vance. You've been helpful, extremely helpful, but you're a civilian, not an investigator. This is now a federal matter, and you're going to step back and let us handle it." Zara felt an anger rising in her chest, hot and sharp. "You're covering something up." "I'm doing my job, which is protecting this country from threats both foreign and domestic. Now Agent Hale will take you home. You'll stay there until we've secured the situation. Do you understand? No, I don't understand, Idris said. Idris is a traumatized foreign national who may or may not be complicit in a terror plot. Nothing he says can be trusted without corroboration. Castellanos turned to Hale. Get her out of here. Hale didn't move. His eyes were locked on Castellanos, his expression unreadable. Director, if there's a security breach, there isn't. But if the asset is claiming, the asset is sedated and will remain so until he's been properly evaluated. She looked between them, and for the first time Zara saw something crack in her facade. Uncertainty, or maybe fear. This conversation is over. Both of you, out, now. Hale's hand found Zara's elbow. Come on. They walked out in silence. The door closed behind them with a heavy click, and Zara could hear the lock engaging. She waited until they were in the hallway before speaking. She's hiding something. Yeah. Hale's voice was tight. She is. You believe me. I believe Idris was trying to tell you something that scared the hell out of Castellanos. He stopped walking and turned to face her. Which means we need to figure out what that something is before she buries it completely. Zara pulled out her phone and showed him the texts. All of them. The ones about the blue wire, the one telling her to run, the one about the security footage. Hale read them slowly, his expression growing darker with each line. When he finished, he looked up at her. Why didn't you show these to Castellanos? Because I don't know who sent them, and I don't know who I can trust. You can trust me. Can I? He held her gaze. Yeah, you can. She wanted to believe him, but trust was a luxury she couldn't afford right now. Instead, she said, the last message mentioned security footage. Hospital, West Wing supply closet. Camera 7. 4 a.m. yesterday. Before the attack. Before Idris was even brought in. Hale pulled out his phone and started typing. I can get access to the hospital's security system, but it'll take time. How much time? A few hours. Maybe less if I call in some favors. Zara shook her head. I can get it faster. How? She thought about Teresa, about the other nurses who'd looked at her differently after the bombing, about the fact that she still had her hospital ID badge in her pocket. I still work there, and right now nobody's going to question why I'm reviewing footage from that night. Hale looked skeptical. If someone's watching you, then they already know where I'm going. She started walking toward the exit. You coming or not? He followed. The drive to Northlake Medical Center took 20 minutes. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red that looked almost apocalyptic. Zara's hands were shaking again, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was anticipation. Whatever was on that footage, it was important enough that someone had risked exposure to tell her about it. The hospital parking lot was half empty. Zara parked near the employee entrance and killed the engine. Hale was on his phone talking in low tones to someone she couldn't hear. When he hung up, his expression was grim. Castellanos just put out an alert, looking for a person of interest in connection with the bombings. Who? He showed her his phone. The screen displayed a grainy photo. A woman with dark hair and tired eyes, staring at the camera with an expression caught between defiance and exhaustion. It was her. Zara's vision tunneled. She's framing me. She's covering her ass, Hale's voice was tight. If Idris was right about someone on the inside, she needs a scapegoat. And you're perfect. Foreign heritage, language skills, access to both targets. That's insane. That's politics. He looked at her. We need that footage, now, before she makes this official. They climbed out of the car and headed for the entrance. Zara swiped her badge and the door clicked open. Inside, the hospital was quieter than she'd ever seen it. The bombing had left its mark. Patients had been transferred to other facilities, elective procedures canceled, entire wings shut down for safety inspections. The few staff members they passed looked haunted, their eyes darting toward every strange sound. Nobody stopped them. Nobody questioned why Zara was there. She was still wearing her hospital ID, and in the chaos, that was enough. They took the service elevator to the third floor where the security office was located. The door was unlocked, the room inside dark except for the glow of monitor screens. A single guard sat at the desk, his head nodded forward in sleep. Hale moved silently, checking the guard's breathing. Out cold, someone drugged him. Zara's pulse jumped. Recently? Can't tell. But he's alive. Hale moved to the monitors and started typing. Camera 7, West Wing Supply Closet. Yesterday, 4 a.m. The footage appeared on screen. The timestamp read 4:03:47. The supply closet was empty, the shelves stacked with linens and medical supplies. Nothing unusual. Then, at 4:04:12, the door opened. A figure stepped inside, male, medium build, wearing scrubs and a surgical cap that obscured most of his face. He moved with purpose, pulling a black duffel bag from beneath his jacket. He placed it carefully behind a stack of IV bags, then pulled out his phone and took a photo, documenting the placement, Zara realized. Proof for whoever he was working with. The man turned slightly, and the camera caught his profile. Zara's blood went cold. It was Dr. Kellen Ward. Hale swore under his breath. "You're a supervising physician." He planted the bomb. Her voice sounded distant, hollow. He knew where it was because he put it there. And he let the evacuation happen knowing it was there, knowing hundreds of people could die. Hale was already pulling out his phone. "I need to call this in." "Wait!" Zara grabbed his arm. "If Ward planted the bomb, he's not working alone. Someone gave him access. Someone coordinated with Idris. Someone—" The lights went out. Not just in the security office, the entire floor plunged into darkness. Emergency lights flickered on a moment later, casting everything in sickly green. Hale's hand went to his weapon. "Stay behind me." They moved into the hallway. It was empty, silent except for the hum of backup generators. But Zara could feel it, the weight of being watched. Someone knew they were here. Someone knew what they'd found. A door slammed somewhere below them. Footsteps echoed up the stairwell, multiple sets moving fast. "This way!" Hale pulled her toward the opposite end of the hall, away from the elevators. They pushed through a door marked staff only and found themselves in a narrow corridor lined with storage rooms. Behind them, the footsteps grew louder, closer. Hale tried a door, locked. Another, also locked. The third one opened into a supply room packed with equipment and boxes. They slipped inside and closed the door, plunging themselves into darkness. Zara's breath sounded deafening in the confined space. She could feel Hale beside her, his body tense, his weapon drawn. Through the crack under the door, she could see shadows moving in the hallway. The footsteps stopped right outside. A voice. Male. Familiar. "I know you're in here, Vance, and I know what you saw." Dr. Ward. Zara's hands clenched into fists. She wanted to scream at him, wanted to demand why he'd done it. But Hale's hand on her shoulder kept her silent. "You think you're helping," Ward continued, his voice eerily calm. "But you're not. You're just making it worse. For everyone." The door handle rattled. Zara held her breath. "The thing about hospitals," Ward said, "is that they're full of ways to die. Gas leaks, medication errors, equipment malfunctions." A pause. "Tragic accidents." The handle stopped rattling. Footsteps moved away, fading into the distance. They waited. 1 minute, 2. Finally, Hale whispered, "We need to move, now." They slipped out of the supply room and back into the corridor. It was empty, but Zara knew Ward was still close, waiting, hunting. They made it to the stairwell and started down. Behind them, a door crashed open. Shouts. More footsteps. "Go!" Hale pushed her ahead of him, and they took the stairs 2 at a time. First floor, ground level. The exit was 20 feet away. The door burst open in front of them. Liza Crow stood there, her face pale but set, and behind her, half a dozen security guards. Zara skidded to a stop. "Liza." "I'm sorry," Liza said, and she actually looked like she meant it. "But you need to come with us." Hale's weapon came up. "That's not happening." One of the guards stepped forward. "Agent Hale, we have orders from Director Castellanos. Zara Vance is wanted for questioning in connection with—" "She didn't do anything." "Then she won't mind answering some questions." The guard's hand moved to his sidearm. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Hale lowered his weapon. "Fine, but I'm coming with her." It's not negotiable." The guard looked at Liza. She nodded. "Let him come." They were escorted out of the hospital and into a waiting van, different from the command vehicle, this one unmarked and windowless. Zara was pushed into a seat, Hale beside her. The doors closed and the van started moving. She looked at Hale. His expression was grim. "We're not going to a federal facility." "How do you know?" "Because we're heading away from the city, and because these aren't federal agents." He nodded at the guards. "They're private contractors." Zara's stomach dropped. "Where are they taking us?" "Somewhere Castellanos can control the narrative." He leaned closer, his voice barely a whisper. "When we stop, stay close to me. And if I tell you to run, you run. Don't look back." But the van didn't stop. It just kept driving, out of Seattle, into the darkness beyond. And with every mile, Zara felt the walls closing in, felt the trap tightening around them. Her phone buzzed. One last message from the unknown number. "You found the truth. Now comes the hard part, surviving it. Ward isn't the top. Castellanos isn't either. There's someone above them both, someone who's been watching this whole time, and they just activated their endgame." The message included an attachment, a photo. Zara opened it, and her heart stopped. It was a picture of her apartment, taken from inside. Her couch, her kitchen table, her bedroom door, slightly ajar, and written on her bathroom mirror in what looked like lipstick. "Welcome home." Zara stared at the photo until her eyes burned. Someone had been inside her apartment, had walked through her space, touched her things, violated the one place she'd felt safe. The lipstick message on her mirror wasn't just a threat, it was a promise. She showed the phone to Hale. His face went hard. "When was this taken?" "I don't know. Could be hours ago. Could be happening right now." He turned to the guards. "We need to turn around. Her apartment's been compromised." The nearest guard didn't even look at him. "We have our orders." "Your orders don't mean shit if someone's setting up a secondary scene to frame her." Hale's voice was controlled, but Zara could hear the edge underneath. "If you bring her in and it turns out someone planted evidence in her home, this whole case falls apart. Is that what Castellanos wants?" The guards exchanged glances. One of them pulled out a radio, stepped toward the front of the van. Zara couldn't hear what he was saying, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. Hale leaned close to her. "The photo. Forward it to me, right now." She did, her fingers clumsy on the screen. A moment later, Hale's phone buzzed. He opened the image, zoomed in, studying every detail. Then his eyes narrowed. "Look at the reflection in the mirror, top right corner." Zara squinted at the screen. At first she saw nothing but the blur of her bathroom. Then she caught it. A dark shape, barely visible, distorted by the angle. A figure. Someone standing just outside the frame. "They wanted us to see that," Hale said quietly. "They're not hiding. They're showing us they're everywhere." The guard with the radio came back. "Change of plans. We're taking a detour." The van turned sharply, and Zara braced herself against the seat. They were heading back into the city now, the lights of Seattle growing brighter through the windshield. But instead of her apartment, the van pulled up outside a nondescript office building in the industrial district. No signs, no markings, just concrete and dark windows. The rear doors opened. "Out, both of you." They climbed out into the cold night air. The building loomed above them, silent and waiting. One of the guards swiped a card at the entrance, and the door clicked open. They were led inside, down a hallway that smelled like dust and old coffee, into a conference room with a single table and half a dozen chairs. "Wait here," the guard said, and closed the door. The lock engaged with a heavy thunk. Hale immediately moved to the door, testing it. Locked, solid. He checked the windows. Reinforced glass, probably bulletproof. Then he pulled out his phone. No signal. "Faraday cage," he muttered. "They're jamming us." Zara sank into one of the chairs, her mind racing. This wasn't a federal holding facility. This was off books. Black site, maybe, or something worse. Somewhere Castellanos could make them disappear if she needed to. "We need to get out of here," she said. "Working on it." But before he could do anything, the door opened again. This time it wasn't a guard. It was Liza Crow. She stepped inside, closed the door behind her, and leaned against it. Her face was drawn, her eyes red-rimmed like she'd been crying, but her voice was steady. "You need to listen to me, and you need to listen fast." Hale's hand moved toward his weapon. "If this is some kind of—" "It's not." Liza cut him off. "I'm not with them."
I never was. Zara stood slowly. Then why did you hand us over? Because if I hadn't, they would have sent someone else.
Someone who wouldn't give you a chance to hear the truth. She pulled something from her pocket, a USB drive. This has everything. Security footage from the hospital going back 6 months, financial records, communications, all of it. All of what? Zara demanded. Proof that Ward's been working with a network, not terrorists, corporate, a private military contractor called Vanguard Solutions. They've been running illegal weapons tests, and they needed a way to field test their latest tech without oversight. Liza's voice was shaking now. The bombs weren't meant to kill anyone. They were meant to create chaos, test response times, identify weaknesses in federal security. Ward planted them because Vanguard paid him. A lot. Hale grabbed the USB drive. How do you know this? Because I'm the one who found the payments. I've been tracking irregularities in the hospital's supply chain for months. Equipment going missing, shipments that didn't match invoices. I thought it was just theft. Then I saw Ward meeting with someone in the parking garage, someone I recognized from the news, a Vanguard executive. She looked at Zara. I didn't know what to do. I was scared, so I kept digging. And when you translated for Idris, you became the latter. Hale was already moving, plugging the drive into his phone with an adapter. Files populated the screen, hundreds of them. He scrolled through, his expression darkening with every page. This is real, he said. Wire transfers, encrypted emails, meeting transcripts. Ward was just the inside man, but the operation goes higher, way higher. How high? Zara asked. Liza met her eyes. Castellanos is on Vanguard's payroll. She's been running interference, making sure federal investigations stall out. That's why she shut down your interview with Idris. That's why she's framing you. You're the one loose end that can tie everything together. The room felt like it was tilting. Zara grabbed the edge of the table to steady herself. Idris knew. That's what he was trying to tell me. That the threat was inside. He was a whistleblower, Liza said. Vanguard recruited him years ago as a translator for their operations overseas. But when he found out what they were really doing, using civilian sites as testing grounds, he tried to run. They hunted him down. The hospital bombing was his attempt to expose them. He planted the charges himself, then let himself get caught so he could warn someone. Warn you. And now he's sedated in a federal holding cell where Castellanos can control the narrative. Hale finished grimly. He looked at Liza. Why are you telling us this? Why not go to the FBI, the press? Because Vanguard owns pieces of both. They've got reach you can't imagine. The only way to stop them is to go public fast and loud before they can spin it. She pulled out her phone. I've been recording everything, every conversation with Ward, every suspicious transaction. I was going to release it myself, but then Castellanos put out the alert for Zara. They're setting her up to take the fall for everything. The bombings, the deaths, the whole operation. And once she's arrested, she'll have an accident in custody. Just like the others. What others? Zara whispered. Liza's face went pale. 3 other people who tried to expose Vanguard in the last 2 years. All dead. Suicides officially. But one was a former Marine who'd never shown signs of depression. Another was a data analyst who sent an encrypted file to a journalist hours before she fell from her balcony. The weight of it crushed down on Zara. She wasn't just fighting to clear her name, she was fighting to stay alive. Hale's phone buzzed. Somehow, signal had returned. He glanced at the screen and his expression shifted. We've got company. Federal vehicles 3 blocks out and closing. That's Castellanos, Liza said. She's coming to make sure you don't leave this building. Then we go now. Hale moved toward the door. It's locked from the outside, Liza said, but there's a service exit in the basement. I can get you there. Why would you help us? Because I've spent 6 months watching Ward treat people like they're disposable, watching him look right through Zara like she was nothing. Liza's voice hardened. And I'm done being complicit. She opened the door. Somehow she had a key, and led them into the hallway. They moved quickly, quietly, down a service stairwell that smelled like mildew and rust. 2 flights down. 3. The basement was a concrete maze of storage rooms and mechanical equipment. Liza stopped at a heavy door marked Emergency Exit Only. This leads to the alley.
There's a car waiting, gray sedan, plates starting with 7 Victor Kilo. Keys are under the driver's mat. Who sent the car? Zara asked. The same person who's been texting you. Liza met her eyes. Someone inside Vanguard who wants out. Someone with enough access to know where you'd be and when. I don't know their name, but they've been feeding me information for weeks. Hale pushed the door open. Cold air rushed in, along with the distant sound of sirens. We need to move. Wait. Zara turned to Liza. Come with us. I can't. If I disappear, they'll know I helped you, but if I stay, I can stall them. Buy you time to get this out. She pressed her phone into Zara's hand. Everything's on here. Recordings, documents, enough to destroy them. Get it to someone who can use it. They'll come after you. Let them. Liza's smile was bitter. I've been invisible my whole career. Maybe it's time people finally see me. Before Zara could respond, Liza shoved them through the door and slammed it shut. The lock engaged from the inside. They ran. The alley was narrow and dark, lined with dumpsters and broken pallets. Zara spotted the sedan exactly where Liza said it would be. Hale found the keys, and they were inside and moving before the sirens got close. He drove fast, but not recklessly, weaving through side streets, avoiding main roads. Zara clutched Liza's phone, staring at the files. There were audio recordings, Ward's voice, cold and detached, discussing payment schedules. Castellanos on a call with someone, using phrases like acceptable losses and containment protocols. And photos. So many photos. Weapons caches, testing sites, bodies. We need to get this to the media, she said. Not yet. Hale's hands were tight on the wheel. If we release this now, Vanguard will bury it. They'll claim it's fabricated, that we're disgruntled employees or conspiracy theorists. We need corroboration. We need Idris. He's locked in a federal facility. Then we break him out. Zara stared at him. You're serious? You have a better idea? She didn't. And the truth was, Idris was the only witness who could confirm everything. Without him, it was just documents and recordings that Vanguard could discredit. Hale pulled into an abandoned parking garage and killed the engine. He pulled out his phone, made a call. It's me. I need a favor. Big one. A pause. I know what I'm asking. Just tell me if you can do it. He listened for a long moment, then hung up. I've got a contact. Former military, now private security. He owes me. Says he can get us into the facility, but it'll cost. How much? Everything on that phone. He wants the files in exchange for access. Zara's stomach turned. If we give him the files, he'll release them himself to every major outlet simultaneously. That's his price. He gets the story, we get Idris. It was a gamble, but they were out of options. Do it, she said. The facility was on the outskirts of the city, surrounded by fencing and cameras. Hale's contact met them 2 blocks away. A man in his 50s with a shaved head and scars that suggested a history Zara didn't want to know. He didn't give his name, just took the phone, scrolled through the files, and nodded. You've got 30 minutes once I cut the power. After that, backup generators kick in and you're locked inside. That's enough, Hale said. Hope so, because if you get caught, I was never here. He drove them to a service entrance on the north side. At exactly 2:47 a.m., the lights went out. The man handed Hale a key card. 3rd floor, room 314. Your assets there, clock's running. They slipped through the door and into the facility. Emergency lighting cast everything in red. Alarms were silent. The contact had disabled them, but Zara could feel the clock ticking in her chest. 29 minutes. 28. They took the stairs, moving fast. 3rd floor. The hallway was empty, but Zara could hear voices somewhere distant, guards trying to figure out what had happened. Room 314 was at the end of the hall. Hale swiped the card, and the door clicked open. Idris was inside, still in bed, still sedated, but stirring. His eyes opened when Zara touched his shoulder. Nahnu nadhab, she said quietly. We're leaving. He tried to sit up, grimaced. La astati. I can't. Naam, tastati. Sahib bikul quwwatak. Yes, you can. Hold on to me. With Hale's help, they got Idris to his feet. He was weak, shaking, but conscious.
They moved back into the hallway. 22 minutes. A door opened behind them. A guard stepped out, saw them, reached for his radio. Hale moved faster. He closed the distance in 3 strides, grabbed the guard's wrist, twisted. The radio clattered to the floor. The guard went down hard, unconscious before he hit the ground. "Move," Hale hissed. They half-carried Idris down the stairs, through the corridors. Zara's lungs burned. Her legs screamed, but she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. 16 minutes. They burst through the service exit into the cold night air. The contact was waiting in a van, engine running. They shoved Idris into the back and climbed in after him. The van peeled out, tires screeching. "You got him," the contact said. "Now I've got work to do." He drove them to a motel on the edge of the city, the kind of place that didn't ask questions, paid cash for a room, left them with a burner phone and a promise that the files would be live within the hour. Inside the room, Idris collapsed onto the bed. Zara checked his pulse, fast but steady. He opened his eyes and looked at her. "Shukran," he whispered. "La tushkirni ba'd, nahnu lasna aminin." "Don't thank me yet. We're not safe." "Nahan sahih, anti sa'altini." "We will be. You saved me." Hale's burner phone rang. He answered, listened, and his face went pale. He hung up and looked at Zara. "It's live. Every file, every recording, every photo. It's on every major news site, every social media platform. The contact dumped everything." Zara turned on the motel TV. The news was already running the story. Images of Ward flashed across the screen. Audio of Castellanos played over footage of the federal building. The anchors looked shell-shocked. "Juice." But allegations of a coordinated effort between private military contractor Vanguard Solutions and federal officials to stage terror attacks on American soil for profit. Director Gabriela Castellanos has been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Dr. Kellen Ward, wanted for questioning in connection with multiple counts of conspiracy and attempted murder. The phone rang again. Hale answered, listened. His expression shifted, something between relief and disbelief. That was the FBI. They're issuing arrest warrants. Ward's in custody. Castellanos is being detained, and they want to talk to us. Are we under arrest? No, they want our testimony. He looked at Idris. And his. The next 72 hours were a blur. Federal agents, lawyers, depositions. Idris, weak but determined, told them everything. How Vanguard had recruited him, how they'd used civilian sites as testing grounds, how he'd tried to expose them and been hunted for it. Zara translated, her voice steady even when her hands shook. Ward was arraigned on 18 counts, Castellanos on 12. Both denied bail, and as the investigation widened, more names surfaced. Vanguard executives, complicit officials, a network that reached further than anyone had imagined. Zara sat in a conference room in the FBI building, watching through one-way glass as Ward was led past in handcuffs. He looked smaller now, diminished, like all the arrogance had been stripped away, leaving only the hollow shell of a man who'd sold his integrity for money. Their eyes met through the glass for just a second. She didn't look away, didn't flinch, just watched as he was taken away. Later, Hale found her in the hallway. He looked exhausted, his tie loosened, his jacket slung over one shoulder. They're offering you a deal, he said. What kind of deal? Full immunity, clean record, and a position. Zara's eyebrows rose. With who? Us, Federal Division, translator, consultant, field operative, if you want it. Castellanos is out, and they need someone they can trust. Someone who proved they'd do the right thing, even when it cost them everything. She thought about it. About the hospital, about the 6 months of being dismissed and ignored, about the moment she'd stepped forward to translate for Idris, knowing it would change everything. I need time, she said. Take all you need. 3 weeks later, Zara stood outside Northlake Medical Center, staring up at the building that had almost become her grave. The repairs were nearly complete. Staff were filtering back in. Life was returning to normal. She walked through the doors one last time. The ER was busy, the organized chaos she remembered. But the faces were different now. Ward was gone. Liza had resigned, last she'd heard, and was working with a legal advocacy group exposing corporate corruption.
And the nurses who'd once ignored Zara now nodded as she passed, their expressions a mix of respect and something that might have been shame. Teresa found her near the nurses' station. "You came back, just to return this." Zara pulled her hospital ID from her pocket and set it on the desk. "I'm done here." "You're leaving?" "Yeah." "Can I ask where you're going?" Zara smiled. "Somewhere I can actually use everything I know. Somewhere I don't have to be invisible." She turned to leave, but Teresa caught her arm. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry. We all are. We should have seen you, should have listened. You're seeing me now. That's what matters." Outside, Hale was waiting by his car. Beside him stood a woman Zara didn't recognize. Late 40s, sharp suit, the kind of presence that commanded attention. "Zara Vance?" the woman asked. "Yes. I'm Director Susan Reeves. I've taken over Castellanos' position." She extended a hand. "I've been reviewing your case. What you did, what you risked. It's exactly the kind of courage we need. Agent Hale says you're considering our offer." "I am." "Then let me sweeten it. We're building a new task force, specialized unit focused on rooting out corruption in federal agencies and private contractors. We need people who aren't afraid to ask hard questions. People who've already proven they can't be bought or intimidated." Reeves's eyes were steady. "We need you." Zara looked at Hale. He nodded slightly. "What about Idris?" she asked. "He's been granted asylum, full protection, and he's agreed to work with us as a consultant. You'd be partnered with him on cases involving international networks." It was more than she'd expected, more than she'd let herself hope for. "When do I start?" Reeves smiled. "How about now?" 6 months later, Zara sat in a secure briefing room, listening to Idris explain the structure of a smuggling network operating out of Eastern Europe. Her notebook was filled with translations, annotations, connections. Across the table, Hale reviewed surveillance photos. Beside him, 2 other agents, recruits Zara had helped vet, cross-referenced financial data. This was her team now, her purpose. When the briefing ended, Reeves pulled her aside. "There's something you should see." She led Zara to a monitor and pulled up a news clip. It showed Liza Crowe standing at a podium, flanked by lawyers, speaking about a new lawsuit against Vanguard Solutions on behalf of families affected by their illegal testing programs. "She's been asking about you," Reeves said. "Wants to know if you'd be willing to testify." "I will." "Good. Because there are 16 more cases waiting in the wings. Vanguard's done. But there are others. Always others." Zara nodded. She understood that now. Understood that corruption was a hydra. Cut off one head, 2 more grew back. But she also understood something else. She wasn't invisible anymore. And the people who'd tried to bury her, tried to make her small and silent and forgettable, they were the ones who'd lost. That night, she stood in her new apartment, a secure unit in a building with actual safety protocols, and stared at the mirror. No threatening messages, no invasions, just her reflection staring back. She thought about her mother, about the nights spent learning the old language, the stories, the songs, about how she'd spent years burying that part of herself because it made her different. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number she'd found weeks ago, a nonprofit that helped refugees and asylum seekers integrate into American communities. "Hello?" Zara spoke in her mother's dialect, clear, unashamed. "Ismi Zara, Uridu an Usaid." "My name is Zara. I want to help." The woman on the other end responded in the same language, her voice warm with surprise and gratitude. They talked for 20 minutes. By the end, Zara had volunteered to teach language classes, to translate for families who'd been silenced by barriers she understood too well. When she hung up, she felt lighter, like she'd reclaimed something stolen. Her work phone buzzed. A message from Hale. "New case. Briefing at 0600. Bring coffee." She smiled and typed back. "I'll bring the language skills. You bring the coffee." The response came immediately. "Deal." Zara set the phone down and looked out the window at the city below. Somewhere out there, people were being dismissed, ignored, told they didn't matter, told to stay quiet. She'd been one of them once, but not anymore. Now she was the person who spoke up, who translated not just words but truth, who turned the things that had made her invisible into the exact reason she couldn't be erased. The weak nurse they'd mocked had become the person they couldn't afford to lose. And that That was the sweetest victory of all.